Hello, I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here today with Breckenridge, managing editor of the Edmonton Journal. Welcome, Dave.
Hey, Dave.
So today we're going to do the top 10 tweets from Alberta and around the world on the coronavirus outbreak. I think it's from day 35 of the outbreak. That's what we're on now, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we start? Go ahead, Dave. What was a tweet that caught your eye?
Well, this caught my eye. I mean, partially because of how bleak it is. It's from Globe and Mail reporter Emma Graney, former colleague of ours. No tourists, no skiers. Banff hit hard by the COVID-19 lockdown is now a ghost town with unemployment hovering around 85%. I mean, people talk about how the Alberta economy and the oil industry is being battered by everything that's going on related to COVID-19 and the price war between Russia and Saudi Arabia. But there are places in Alberta and in other parts of Canada. I think of Whistler in BC, where tourism is a huge part of the economy, and just kind of it stuck out to me of how stark that number is.
My first tweet is from U.S. comedian Conan O'Brien, and he says, quote, Trump says Jesus could have avoided crucifixion by taking hydroxychloroquine.
Oh, Conan. Next up for me, Oilers fan Jason Hominick at Real Deal Hom 10. I think most people are at the lockdown stage where it's an argument over politics, golf, who should not be in grocery stores, etc. I miss the days when people had arguments over Matt Benning and who the starting goalie for the Oilers should be. Hashtag relax people.
That's a good one. I have another one on the letter side. This is from Dr. Muna Saleh, who's an assistant professor in Edmonton. And she says, good morning to everyone, except the young human who just pleaded with me to order takeout food today because they're tired of my cooking.
The struggle is real. Next up for me, I have Ontario Premier Doug Ford. I want to extend my greatest thank you to Jason Kenney and the good people of Alberta for their generous donation of critical medical equipment and supplies. These supplies will go directly to the heroes on the front lines. By standing together as Team Canada, we will defeat COVID-19.
That was in response to Alberta's gift of $41 million in personal protective equipment.
Yes.
All right. My next one is from a conservative commentator in Texas, Heath Mayo. And he says, oh, my cat's here. He says, pointing to the flattened curve as evidence that we shouldn't have gone through all the trouble to flatten it is the dumbest argument I've seen in a while. But here we are.
Oh, I tend to agree. I was going to pick that one as well. It's true. I had wondered when we were going to start hearing that.
Here we are. Yeah.
Yeah. Up next for me, we have Toronto Sun columnist Laurie Goldstein. Why no one should admire China's basic dictatorship. This is actual fake news. Chinese authorities lying to the world in the early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic, claiming it was not contagious and arresting those who were telling the truth. Any links to a video, several were arrested in China for spreading the word that it was actually contagious.
Yeah, and that video aired on January 3rd on one of the biggest TV networks in Asia, January 3rd, talking about this Chinese muzzling and crackdown on people, the first Chinese doctors who were spreading word about coronavirus. This one comes I think Dr. Theresa Tam said yesterday that about half the cases and half the deaths in Canada have been at long-term healthcare places. And this is in response to that. Toronto feminist and writer Michelle Jones says, quote, how much evidence do you need that there's a sickness in the Conservative Party that can't be treated? Every single man saying if COVID-19 is only in long-term healthcare units, why can't we open the economy? All conservative white men, all of them. So she doesn't like that argument, and she's saying it's only coming from conservative white men.
Oh, my. All right. And last up, I have Aaron Woodrick, federal director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. And this keys in on the discussion around Justin Trudeau spending Easter weekend with his family, and he's been taking a lot of flack for that because people have been told for several days leading up to Easter, don't travel. You may have to miss out on the holiday with loved ones. I also know that Conservative leader Andrew Scheer has been taking flack for being on a government jet to fly home to be with his family so then he can fly back to be in Ottawa. Aaron Woodrick says, actually, the problem isn't that the PM is doing something wrong. It's that regular people are also doing stuff that's permitted. Example, rollerblading with only your cohabitating family in an empty parking lot, but they're getting hit with big fines and they shouldn't be. And I think that's part of the problem. I know that there are a lot of people who begrudge the Prime Minister for traveling to go spend Easter with his family when people are being told to stay home. And that's part of the debate. But the other part of the debate is people are being harassed by authorities for doing things that they've been told are supposed to be permitted. You know, in Alberta, the chief medical officer of health, Dr. Dina Hinshaw, has talked about people should get outside for walks and all of that. In Alberta, we're not seeing fines handed out at this point. In other parts of the country, people are being hit with fines for getting out and spending time as a family among a small group of people who cohabitate. And I find that very strange. I think that's a lot of what the frustration is around Trudeau doing something that people have been told not to do, and then people who are doing things that they thought were okay being punished for it.
Yeah, Trudeau's problem on this is that he himself told people that they might have to be separated from loved ones on Easter and do it over Skype, and that they shouldn't travel. And there's been all kinds of messages not to go over provincial boundaries.
Yeah.
And so he appears to have violated what he was saying, and that's how he got in trouble there. I have some sympathy for the people in Trudeau's position who have a great deal of pressure on them and a lot of stress. The need to unwind and to maintain their mental health. But this is the same for all Canadians.
Yeah.
We all face this crisis of being confined inside, and for many people really, really intense worries about their future. And I just think Trudeau set a really bad example there. He should have lived by what he was saying, and it should have occurred to him. Like I just said in my address that you might have to be separated on Easter. You shouldn't be traveling around. We've heard again and again, don't go to your cottage, don't go to a rural place. And for him to do that, he needs to think a little bit more. Is what I
Very
would
true.
say.
Yeah.
All right. My last one, I just think that this is going to be, we've all been so focused on flattening the curve, and that's been the correct focus until now. But as we start to flatten it, we are starting to face the economic consequences of this. And for us, no one here, I don't think, few people at least, or I hope few people in Canada are going hungry yet, but around the world, there's starting to be some major fears. And this comes from Coronavirus Alerts. It's a site that puts together useful news links from around the world, and it comes from a New York Times story. And their tweet is, based on the New York Times story, many countries would soon face a dreadful question: death by coronavirus or by hunger. As economies collapse and food grain stocks dwindle, humanity faces a challenge that is too horrifying to contemplate. And so I know, like, there's a debate that's starting to be joined about how, what steps do we take? How can we get out of this? What should be open, what should be closed? In Alberta, it's coalesced around the issue of golf courses, which is kind of in some ways a silly issue for it to coalesce around, when really the issue is we've got to get back to work, because we are going to destroy our economy. People are going to lose their jobs. We're going to cause permanent damage. We could go into a depression. And around the world, there's already, there's fears of mass starvation and hunger coming out of this.
Yeah.
So I think if you're a politician and you're a leader, or anyone engaged in the public debate, and you're not engaged, if you're just kind of trying to clamp down on all talk about opening up, you're going in the wrong direction. We need to have a serious discussion right now about what measures are sensible to take in terms of opening up our economy and when we can do that. and put forward ideas and give our leaders they all face this terrible pressure, Dave.
Yeah.
Of if they make the easy thing would be to play it safe and say, well, I'm going to clamp down, or no deaths will be on me. But on the other hand, there's going to be all kinds of turmoil and death if we don't open up. So they have to be given the freedom by us to start to engage in this conversation. We have to engage it seriously ourselves and look at measures that we need to take.
Well, I think that this kind of follows the discussion around getting governments to release modeling data, right? There was a big push that BC released its modeling for the virus. Ontario did. When was the federal government going to do it? There was pushback among some against the media for wanting that information. I think this is the next logical step is, okay, you released your modeling data. Now, how does the caseload, new cases, recoveries, deaths, how does that compare to the modeling data? And what does that mean in terms of, have we flattened the curve enough by your estimation? And because we have, when do we take the next steps in this process? And I think that has to be an ongoing discussion. It's not just, oh, we got the models 2 weeks ago or a week ago. What's next? And we have to keep pushing for that information, because the models allow them to plan to respond to the crisis. And part of the response is the medical response. But then when we start to see cases flatten out, or if we see a jurisdiction doing better than the modeling expected, what does that mean for your plans on distancing measures? And how soon can you open up? And I think that the media and the public deserve to have an ongoing discussion with public figures about how the progress is being made and how that impacts their plans for the next 3 months or 6 months.
And I completely agree with that. And Alberta released its modeling last week, and already we see we're well below the projections. Like they were saying there's going to be more than 200 people in ICU at this time, according to the model. That's what we should have, more than 200 people today. And we have, I think it's like 30 or 40, if I'm not mistaken. So we're already, so part of the reason they released these models, and Alberta's model had a wide range of potential outcomes. Part of it is just to scare the public, right? Like to get us to act in a certain way. So it's like we could have 1.5 million cases of COVID at the peak, was the Alberta model, with incredible number of deaths. And so that's part of it. But now that we are under it, what are we going to do? And I think it's incumbent upon, so the Conservatives put forward, they came out with a plan about what the next step is, the massive testing, 20,000 tests by the end of May, for instance, and some of the things they want to do. I think it's up for the NDP. Like they've been on the Conservatives, rightly so, about this, that, and the other thing. But it's up to the NDP now to also say, okay, here's how we see things opening up, to put themselves on the line in a way, like in a more positive discussion. And I would say this about the federal Conservatives with the Liberals too, with Trudeau's government. The federal Conservatives have to say, here's how we're going to open it up. This will give the party that's actually in power, whether you're Trudeau in Ottawa or Kenney in Alberta, some leeway to take measures, so the opposition isn't beating you over the head in 3 months if things go wrong. That's not the way to operate right now. I think there needs to be a little bit more push from everybody to say, okay, here's what to put yourself on the line and say, here's what I think the solution is, not just to be the critic. And that includes us on a certain level, includes me, who's a columnist and gives my opinion all the time. We have to give that space to our leaders to take. They're going to be taking a risk. That's what it comes down to, a calculated risk. And I think they're going to need our support in terms of making that kind of risk.
Yep, that's true.
Alrighty. Well, let's leave it there. Thanks
Sounds
for
good.
talking today, Dave.
Thanks, David.
Talk to you later, guys.